licensing. My name is Perry Reynolds, and I work for the International Housewares Association. I'd like to introduce you to Jessica Blue, who works with our partner, the Licensing Expo. And Jessica will introduce her panel. We hope you enjoy today's webinar, and it will be recorded and available to you later.
Good morning, International Housewares Association members, and thank you, IHA, for inviting us back to talk to your members about licensing and brand extension. We're really excited to be hosting this webinar today. And if you have any questions, you can ask questions using your keypad throughout, and then we will answer them at the end of the presentation. So as Perry said, my name's Jessica Blue. I'm the Vice President of Licensing Expo. I've been running licensing shows for UBM Advanced Star for 8 years, 10 years actually now, and I ran Brand Licensing Europe for 8 years, and I've been running Licensing Expo for the last 2. I'm going to be talking a little bit about licensing and brand extension, a 101 if you like, for around 15 minutes. I'm talking about the players, some of the terminology, some of the types of licensing that we see. I'm also joined today by my colleague, Stephen Extract. He is a licensing veteran, and he's the global publisher and founder of License Global magazine. And he's going to be talking at the end of the presentation for around 10 minutes about trends we're seeing in the industry today as they pertain to the housewares market. We're also joined today by James Slifer, SVP of Business Development for the Joe Steloria Group. The Joe Steloria Group is one of Licensing Expo's exhibitors and one of the leading licensing agencies based in New York City. Okay, so that's the intros over. UBM Advanced Star owns 4 products in the licensing industry: License Global magazine, a Licensing Expo in Las Vegas in June, Brand Licensing Europe in London in October, and also our new digital platform, licenseconnect.com. And we basically are the go-to resource for everything licensing, and we serve the licensing market. So I think we all know that the global licensing industry is big business, and in 2013, the industry accounted for $251.8 billion in retail sales. So it's a huge market. It's an exciting market. The house and homewares piece of it was worth $19.4 billion in global retail sales in 2013 and $14.7 billion domestically. So it's a sizable piece of the licensing market and represents almost 10%, 9.3% of U.S. licensed retail sales. So let's start really with what is licensing and kind of how does it work. Consumers really aren't aware of licensing. They just buy the products that they like, and that's really how it should be. Licensing should be a seamless product brand extension, if you like. And put very simply, licensing is a contractual permission to use a brand, character, or image in association with a defined product for a defined period of time in a defined territory. And we also talk about the brand as the intellectual property sometimes, or just the property. And really, licensing is the process by which a brand or property owner extends their brand out of its principal environment and onto products of a completely different nature. So just to give you a real example, I've chosen an intellectual property that's represented by the Joe Steloria Group and is owned by Kelloggs. So Tony the Tiger, as you might know, is a piece of intellectual property that's owned by Kelloggs, which in itself is also intellectual property or a brand. And Kellogg's is represented for licensing by the Joe Steloria Group. And Joe Steloria have here found a licensee for Kellogg's, which in this case is a dishware manufacturer. This is actually a shot taken from Licensing Expo. And the deal was negotiated by the Joe Steloria Group, and a royalty on each sale is being paid back by the dishware manufacturer back to Kellogg's. So really this deal has added value and desirability to the dishware product and should mean more sales for the manufacturer and royalties back to Kellogg. So really a win-win for the parties involved. So let's talk a little bit about the players. You'll hear these terms a lot when you enter the licensing world, and this is how the relationship works. The licensor is the owner of the brand or property, and the licensor might be represented by a licensing agent, such as Joe Deloria, or may not. The licensee is the consumer goods manufacturer or the app developer or the publisher or the video games maker who buys the permission to use the license on the product that he or she develops and makes. And then a crucial piece of the licensing puzzle is the retailer. And the retailer is obviously the one that buys the product from the licensee. In some instances, the retailer buys permission direct, and that is called a direct-to-retail deal, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So a little bit more terminology for you. We talk a lot about licensing out, and that's when a brand owns the intellectual property and is licensing it out to a licensee. We call that licensing out. Licensing in is the opposite. And when a licensee takes a brand into their business to make product, we call that licensing in. The question a lot of people have really is about royalties. How much should I be paying? And is this a fixed price transaction, and what does it look like? So just to explain a little bit, when we talk about licensing, we're really talking about the licensing agreement. And the licensing agreement is between the licensor and the licensee, and it's legally binding, and it's there to protect the interests of both parties. The licensing agreement is prepared by the licensor, and it's approved or amended by the licensee, and then signed by both parties. The licensee will be paying the licensor a royalty for the use of the licensed property on their product, and this is normally in the format of an agreed percentage on sales. And a royalty can be anything between 3 and 22%. And I know that sounds like a big window, but the percentage really depends on a number of things. It depends on the type of property you're dealing with. Is your property very hot, for example? Is it an evergreen property? What type of category is it in? Is it art? Is it food? What's the price point? And James can maybe talk a little bit more to that point, but really there is a range. It's important to negotiate. The licensor is going to want, as much royalty as possible, and as a licensee, you want to make sure that the royalty you're paying is manageable and is sensible. You may also be required as a licensee to commit to a minimum guarantee, and that's a minimum fee or level of remuneration that has to be paid by the licensee to the licensor, irrelevant of product or service sales. So, that's just to clarify at the outset, there's a minimum amount of money that will be paid in royalties over the period of the contract, but at the end of that contract period, if this amount hasn't been met, you'll be required to top this up. You may also be required to pay in advance, perhaps, which is an upfront payment from the licensee to the licensor, and is normally paid on signature of contract. So if you have some more specific questions about that, I think James would be a good point person to ask, maybe at the end, but that's kind of how it works. We talk a lot about lifestyle licensing now, and that's where, and I think Kellogg's is a good example of that, where consumers have taken that brand and its affiliates into multiple parts of their home. And that's a really good example of kind of a lifestyle license. An evergreen license is something that you don't really have to explain what the property is. You just have to say the name and someone will understand what you mean. So for example, if I say Mickey Mouse, everyone has a picture of the mouse with the ears in their head, and I don't really have to explain anymore. That's an example of an evergreen property. So why do consumers buy a licensed product? Well, really it's all about emotional connection to the brand. And this can take a number of forms, as I've kind of put up here. It could be an aspirational, to replicate a style or a brand essence that consumer admires. It could be to be used in fantasy play, where the younger consumers, typically 2 to 6, like to role play that they're a character in their favorite show, and they want props that replicate that fantasy world. It could be as a souvenir, to take something special home from an event, a film, concert, theme park visit. It could be because of nostalgia. Someone buys a product because it makes them feel nostalgic. They like to relive a special memory from their past, either as an individual or to share with their children who are growing up. Fanship is a big one. So people buy things to show their affinity with something, to express their interests, to find like-minded people, to express an attitude, a personality, a humor, an edge, a sweetness. Licensed products really the purchase of licensed products are being driven by some or all of those things. Okay. So these are some of the benefits for the brand owner of being a licensor and entering licensing partnerships. It increases your brand awareness, and it can help you build your brand globally, but decreases inventory risk. So your partners are the one that's making the product, and you are taking the royalty, but you don't have to have a ton of stock. It also, importantly, you're partnering with an expert. So rather than trying to make the product yourself, you've actually found best-in-class partners that can make great products and that have proven retail sales and retail partnerships and expertise in a particular product sector. In terms of the licensee or retailer, it helps you sell product because of all the things that I've just talked about, the emotional connections with the brands, the affinity that the consumers already have with those brands that have been built up over many, many years in some instances, and it helps gain exclusivity through direct-to-retail deals. So these are just some ideas of how, if you're a licensor or if you're a licensee, how you might go about finding partners, licensing partners. Obviously, there's the two big shows, which are huge networking opportunities, Licensing Expo and Brand Licensing Europe. There's also License Global magazine, which is a great resource. They have a daily e-news. They have 6 issues a year. They have 6 show dailies at the shows, 1 on each day for both shows, and they also publish the top 150 global licensors list. And Stephen can talk more about that in a second. And also Lima are the event sponsor for the shows, our shows, and they're a great resource also. They represent the interests of the licensing community and also do some great networking events too. So this is just a snapshot of the floor for Licensing Expo. There are 5,000 brands represented on around 480 booths. On the left-hand side of the floor are all the consumer brands and the agents, fashion brands, lifestyle brands, and art brands. And on the right-hand side of the floor is what we call character and entertainment, and that's where you will find the movie studios, TV production companies, video game companies, and celebrity agents, etc. So it's a fairly big show. You probably need a good couple of days there to get everything that you want to get done. And we also have 26 seminar sessions that are produced by Lima, running alongside over the 3 days. And if you're very new to licensing, there's a great 5-hour beginner's masterclass that happens on the Monday before the show even opens. So you can really get to grips with licensing before you jump into the floor on Tuesday. This is just a snapshot of some of the 15,500 attendees that come along, and you can see that it's represented pretty much all the major international retailers, licensees, and manufacturers, and that's across all product categories. So we have manufacturers and retailers in health and beauty, house and home, in video games, in toys, in apparel, and so on. Okay, so that's my 15 minutes. I'm going to now pass over to James. Oops. There we go. Oh, hold on 1 second. I need to go to the beginning. Okay, James, over to you.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. Just to give you a little background on myself, I have a little over 20 years in licensing, both on the licensee and licensor side. So I do have that experience on both sides. Today I work for an agency for the past about 13 years, diversified. We represent a lot of clients within the corporate side like Kelloggs and PepsiCo and Constellation Brands, who owns Corona and Modelo and a few other Mexican beer brands. We also represent some media brands, designers, digital talent that come from bloggers that you would see on the internet to YouTube stars. And then we are working with an up-and-coming celebrity chef, Fabio Viviani, who you'll start to see products in the market, as well as at the Houseware Show coming up next month. But today I'm going to talk to you about three key areas, really: how to be a successful licensee, what I look for when I'm securing licensees on behalf of my client. And just to give you a little background on that, we manage about 500 different manufacturers from various product categories. Probably about 50% of it is here in North America, and then the remainder is international. And then I will finish with what you should look for when you're dealing with property owners. What are some of the questions or things that you should expect when you're taking a look at licensing? So to become a successful licensee, areas where I would recommend that you excel at and have experience, obviously, is in the retail expertise. You're all manufacturers. You guys are already selling to retailers or e-commerce, catalogs, and so forth. But really, you know, what we look at is establish and maintain relationships with key retail accounts. So we look at manufacturers having success there. When you take on a license, you want to have the knowledge of that particular property and what their objectives are. You should really, know what their strategy is for the upcoming year, so that you're aligned with your retail conversations with buyers. You really want to know what that property owner's core business, what they're doing. Where are they selling their core business? If it is a brand like Kellogg's that has cereal or snacks that are being sold in grocery and mass and other accounts, what kind of marketing promotions they're doing. And then also a lot of these properties that you're looking at licensing, they already have established licensing programs. So you want to know what their other licensees are doing, because you might be selling to the same channels as they are. And I'll talk a little more about that further down the road. You also want to, in becoming a successful licensee, is you really want to establish good relationships with the key stakeholders at the property owner or the agency. You want to have those relationships with the brand managers that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, to creative, which is where they're trafficking your product approvals, to even senior management. And why I say that's critical is if you ever run into an issue that you need an approval done quickly, or if there's a situation that comes up with your contract, the better relationships that you have with that property owner or agency, the much easier it is to really resolve any of these situations. And I will tell you, just my licensees that we manage, the ones that we're much closer with, things tend to get done much better. You also, depending on who you're working with, the type of property and how big it is for your company, but dedicated resources to the license. You want to have one point of contact from on the manufacturer side, communicating to the brand owner. There will be many people in your company that are dealing with licensing. I mean, you're going to have your legal department, your accounting, product development, and so forth. But you need to have at least one person that knows what's going on, so that if there are any situations that you can easily resolve them. Open lines of communication with the property owner. If you have up-and-coming retail meetings, you want to let the brand owner know that, because they might inform you of something else that's going on with the brand in that particular retail account. Or you want to provide recaps from that meeting, or sell-in and sell-through, and so forth. But communication is key to the success here. Other areas, collaboration with the licensor is very important. Be open. So if their licensor is giving you some direction on product development, just be open. Look at their suggestions. Sometimes they want to get involved with you with joint retail presentations, or even cross-marketing opportunities. But I find the best relationships is when the brand owner and the licensee can work with one another and work not only in product development, but selling into retail. And then you also want to look at establishing relationships with some of their licensees. In some cases, on the brands that you do end up licensing might have international presence. So there might be a friendly competitor of yours that's not selling here in North America, but they're in Europe or Asia that you can share joint sourcing. So that can reduce your investment in tooling and molding. I found that to be very successful in certain categories that I've worked with in the past. It will help you reduce costs. And then as well as other types of licensees here in your own territory. In some cases, like at the Houseware Show, I have 2 licensees that are co-opting a booth at the show, so they help offset some cost. Next slide. And then what I look for in a licensee when we're looking to fill a particular category, especially in housewares, is, and some of this is a little repetitive, but obviously retail relationships, that's always key. I'll call the buyer, I'll find out who the preferred vendors are, who do they like working with in some cases, but that's always been an important criteria. I like to look at what the capabilities are in product development and sourcing. We love working with manufacturers that will invest in taking a commodity product but then tweaking it with innovation, some unique features, whatever it might be. But to us, that's very appealing because we want to make sure when we're on the shelf that we stand out and have a different and unique product. We look at marketing capabilities. We want to see if these manufacturers have the ability to strategically market not only to the trade but also to consumers. So that could be through social media, websites, like having a micro website on your own manufacturing site but dedicated to the brand, taking out trade ads, doing PR, promotions, even product demonstrations depending on the category. Then also just making sure from a competitive perspective that you have an understanding on your competitors, where they're selling, what other licenses they might have, how they're priced. There's obviously other variables. But not every manufacturer, importer, or distributor will have all these disciplines, and that's fine. You know, we can't expect these manufacturers that we work with to be experts in every area. But whatever we can do, we'll try to help out because we do have the marketing capabilities, product development, we have retail relationships. So we'll step in if we feel that the manufacturer doesn't have that discipline or needs some assistance, because it's in our best interest to help you. We want you to be successful because that's how we generate our royalties and commissions. And then I just referenced a few manufacturers here. These are big companies that you'll see at the Houseware Show that are heavily involved in licensing. There's obviously many more that are not mentioned here, but these are companies that have systems in place that take on multiple licenses, typically that don't compete with one another and have been very successful in licensing. Next slide. And then what should you look for in a licensor? All licensors are different. I mean, if you're working with Disney, they're a machine. They're one of the best in the business that have a lot of resources. They have offices at all the major national retail accounts, from Bentonville at Walmart to Minneapolis with Target and so forth. But they're all different. Not one is equal from another. So really, you want to work with licensors that are supportive of licensing, that will give you the assets and tools to be a successful partner. You will come across some licenses that maybe doesn't have an established or successful program. You might only just have the brand that they give to you. That's fine. That just means that you're going to have to invest a lot more in creating those assets and getting in front of the trade and retail and so forth. But a lot of the ones that are successful, that do have established programs, will give you assets like a style guide. In certain categories, annual and seasonal graphic packages are relevant. And then in others, technology, patents, and ingredients. An example here that I'm showing you is the chef that I work with. His name is Fabio Viviani. These are the assets that he provides to his licensees. And so this will be a package here, depending on the category. Obviously, things will be tweaked. But just gives you an understanding when you are taking on a license, what kind of assets are available. And you'll see some of his products on the show floor at the Houseware Show. Next slide. Other assets that I would look for are marketing materials. So if you look at fact sheets that are here on the right-hand side, these are created by the brand owner, given to you. So if you want to use these to hand out to your potential buyers at a show or at a retail meeting, whatever it might be. It's very helpful for the brand owner to give you that guidance and direction because they're constantly updating this information with the latest info for you to use. They will also help create retail presentations for you. Again, we want to make sure that you are have those tools with you. We will also invest our own resources and attend those meetings. We'll give an overview on the brand, you're experts on the product, but we're here to help you. And then also, I had mentioned this before, but collaborating with other licensees and programs. That could be joint rep groups. Sometimes it's good to have one rep group represent multiple licensees calling on one account instead of having multiple licensees calling on that same buyer. It really depends on the retail account and on the property that you work with. Joint retail meetings, as I mentioned before, sourcing, and even co-op trade booths. We've done that from time to time at various trade shows where multiple licensees will exhibit in one booth and then we'll manage it on their behalf. We will secure the retail meetings as well. Next slide. And here we have just showing you some examples of some illustrations and concepts that we've mocked up for retail meetings. If you look at the bottom left there for Kellogg's, this is a concept at Kroger that we put together. Now, this is a little unique because we brought my client's core product, the cereal, with some of the licensed product, which is more of the melamine product like cereal bowls and other related items. On the far right there, you see something at Bed Bath & Beyond. We actually went in, presented to the pet buyer, which actually there wasn't a pet buyer at the time, but we worked with the general merchandiser, brought Animal Planet into Bed Bath & Beyond, and 4 years later, they have dedicated a pet buyer and a successful pet business that they have there now. And then just another examples here of what we've done with Kellogg's when doing clip strip products that you can see that is exhibited at one of the grocery stores right next to one of my client's core products, and same with Entenmann's. We have our cookbooks there next to their core products. Next slide. Then also, you want to make sure that the brand owner is going to assist you. I mean, there are some overlap where some manufacturers will already have these systems in place and doing press releases and social media, but in other cases you might not. So you want to coordinate and collaborate with one another. But the first thing that I do is when I sign on someone in Housewares, we're going to send out press releases to the individual trade publications. So that's going to be like Homeworld as an example. We will send information to, as well as in the licensing community. So License Magazine being the leader within the licensing industry is our go-to for trade publication. You could look for also licensors as they have their own e-stores that they will support your products and place it on there. It's never a primary avenue for licensed product. It's more of a secondary because we really want you to go into retail. But e-stores are becoming more and more important, not only on our clients' own websites, but our clients are also forging relationships with retailers like Amazon, where we will do dedicated brand pages and bring our licensees and have them have access to that. Other things we do is like trade advertisements that you see in the bottom, the middle of the screen there, what we've done with Kellogg's. We can do that in, again, industry trade publications or in licensing. Social media has become very important, as well as bloggers. Over the past 2-3 years. All of my clients, being the larger CPG companies, all have very active Facebook and Twitter and other social media accounts. So we will present once we launch a new product. We will reference it on the site there, or if we have a sweepstakes for promotion. But we'll put a calendar together so that we can help our licensees and driving traffic to retailers. Next slide. And then here I'm just going to give you a few examples of some of the product that you would see at the Housewares show that we manage and work on. So Entenmann's is one of my clients we've been working with for about 8 years now. Primarily really 2 companies here that will be at the Housewares show. We have a bakeware company, and then we also have a company that does candles on all the scented flavor profiles that Entenmann's has. Next slide. Corona, which is owned by Constellation Brands. We will be launching at the Housewares show various products, but we have about 3 to 4 companies that are at the show. from your typical glassware, coolers, we have refrigerators that are novelty that you see on the top right there, beach chairs. This is just probably like 1/5 of the type of products that we're just launching with Corona, but this will give you an idea from a lifestyle perspective using my client's logo. Next slide. Kellogg's is a big client of ours. We have multiple partners here as well, from tabletop products that you'll see from a company called Tabletops Unlimited to some of the clip strip items on the left-hand side that you'll see in grocery that are primarily clip strips next to my client's core product, and where my client sometimes will give them coupons that they can put inside the product to drive traffic to my client's core product. But Kellogg's, we probably have, I'm going to say, about 300 various SKUs just in housewares alone. Next slide. Here's another company that's going to be launching textiles in the kitchen that will be at the show. Next slide. And then just to give you an idea, and this is what we share with our licensees, especially partners that are going to be in the houseware show. This is our vision when I'm going to be going and walking the houseware show, when I'm looking to take my client's brand into new categories. What we try to do is look at trends that are going on in the market and apply that to my client's brand and product itself. But this just gives you an idea of the sophistication that Kellogg's gets involved with. So we're looking at going into appliances that are branded the Kellogg's brand, and kitchen tools and other types of accessories. Next slide. PepsiCo is another one of my clients. Very similar approach to Corona, similar product categories. You'll notice here these are very nostalgic logos. We really don't use current logos because that's very promotional, but when you start to go looking at some of the older logos, and this brand goes back over 100 years, my manufacturers tend to use the logos that you see here today. Next slide. And then here again, when we're talking about trends, we constantly are working with design houses coming up with design patterns and graphic packages that we can provide to our manufacturers. So these are just some ideas here. So we'll give these assets and tools to our houseware partners and develop products, or go in front of a retailer and present them product to gauge their interest before we would sign on a manufacturer. And next slide. That's it.
Okay, over to you, Stephen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Extract, and I'm the group publisher of License Global magazine. Just before we start, before I do my portion of the webinar here, I just want to tell you that probably the most critical factor for staying on top of what's going on in licensing is to know what's going on in general in popular culture. And so I really encourage you all, at the end of my presentation, there'll be a web address for going to licensemag.com, which is our website, where you can sign up for free daily e-news, which will take you about 30 seconds to read every morning, and it'll give you an overview of what's hot in among licensed properties. So I really encourage you all to sign up for that. Again, it's free of charge, costs no money, but it really will keep you up to date on what's going on in the business of licensing and what are the hot properties, because I think that's really critical for everyone in this webinar today. So with that said, I'm just going to quickly take you through some brand licensing success stories in the housewares category that we've seen in the last decade or so. And that's folks like Martha Stewart, certainly George Foreman with his grill, is probably one of the more successful licenses ever created for housewares. Michael Graves, Better Homes and Gardens, Epicurious, Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein, Vera Wang, Kate Spade, the Food Network, Wolfgang Puck, Bobby Flay, the Duck Dynasty brand, Campbell's, Coca-Cola, Disney, and Disney's Frozen is certainly a hot property right now, Hello Kitty, and Pillsbury Doughboy. Those are just some properties that probably are top of mind for everyone when you walk through retail today. Next slide, please. So some of the big names in housewares licensing with star power still are people like Guy Fieri, the chef, Rachel Ray, another Food Network chef, someone who made her name in Food Network, Kathy Ireland, who's a lifestyle guru, Wolfgang Puck, a chef, Bobby Flay, a chef, Emerald Lagasse, and certainly Martha Stewart. Next slide, please. So one of the areas I wanted to focus on is celebrity chefs in licensing, because it's really become a major mainstay in retail these days in the housewares category. When you walk through retail, you see so many celebrity chefs. And so who are sort of the current hot chefs right now? Buddy Valastro, who's Cake Boss. I'm sure if anyone watches television, they've seen Cake Boss. He's quite a personality, and he's built a pretty good licensing program. Dominique Ansel, the Cronut Craftsman. Cronuts are sort of that new cross between croissants and donuts, and he's creating a licensing program there. Jason Santos, who's a very well-known New England chef, and he's the blue-haired virtuoso. He appears quite frequently on a lot of morning shows, and well-known chef. Ingrid Hoffman, who's a Latina tycoon chef, appears on Univision, and really has an emotional appeal to the Hispanic audience, which is a growing audience in the United States. And certainly Fabio Viviani, who James was just talking about, who James represents, and has quite a great product range out there as well in housewares. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening more recently with YouTube phenomenon. You know, all of those chefs that we just saw are sort of people who've made their names in standard media. But what we're seeing coming up very quickly is there's a whole new range of chefs and celebrities coming from YouTube that will sort of be the next wave of celebrities that retailers are going to be looking for. And so it's really the next Martha Stewart, Rachel Ray, is going to be coming from this world. And a lot of us who are of a certain age aren't that familiar with it. It's more a phenomenon for teenagers, young adults. But it's definitely something to keep your eyes on, because truly the next celebrities are coming from YouTube. And we don't want to miss that. And that's why I encourage you again to really keep your eye on licensemag.com, subscribe to our daily e-news, because we're watching this area very, very, very closely, and we'll help keep you up to date on who these up-and-coming celebrities are. Next slide, please. So what's hot right now? What's hot for 2015? The YouTube stars that are hot right now are, and I picked 5. These are sort of the top 5 that we see. They're getting the most views on YouTube. So they all have their own little channels on YouTube. First is Richard Blaze from a channel called Burger Lab. And basically he makes different kinds of burgers, and he's quite a great personality, as you can see from the photo there. Barbecue Pit Boys, these are guys who have a TV show all about barbecuing, and it's excellent, and it's really a big hit on YouTube. Hannah Hart from My Drunk Kitchen, it's a little bit offbeat. This is a young woman who has a show where she cooks, but she also drinks at the same time. So it's a little bit offbeat, maybe not for mainstream, but it's quite humorous, and she's got quite an audience following her. Hilla Johnson from Hilla Cooking, another great YouTube chef, and Laura Vitale from Laura in the Kitchen. Again, I really encourage you to try to search these out, take a look at them, and keep your eye out for these folks, because they're the next up-and-coming stars, and they will do licensing, and there will be products at retail. So keep your eyes out for them. Next slide, please. What else is hot? So MasterChef for kids. One of the big trends we're seeing is that kids are getting in the kitchen with their parents and they're cooking. And it's probably been going on for quite some time, but finally there's actually a TV show, MasterChef for Kids, MasterChef Junior, that actually encourages this and brings kids in to cook with these Master Chefs. And there's going to be an entire product range that will be created for this particular TV show, and that kids will sort of will want their parents to buy these products. So this is another trend that we're going to see. We'll probably see more of this, and another trend to keep your eye out for. Next slide, please. And then what we're also seeing is magazines that are particularly home-oriented or cooking-oriented are getting into licensing. Again, some of them have been doing it for a while, and some are sort of just dipping their toe in now. But these are trusted brands that consumers look to, especially when it comes to recipes and cooking. Consumers depend on publishing and magazines, and whether they're the actual still paper magazines or whether they're digital, consumers are very dependent on them, and they're trusted names that consumers trust and know. So when they're in retail, they actually are attracted to these brands, and so you're going to see more of these brands appearing at retail with housewares products. So keep your eye out for these particular ones, and even more coming down the pike. Next slide, please. So that's really what I have. That's all I have to say on current trends. But again, I really encourage you, go to www.licensemag.com, sign up for the daily e-news. It'll take you 30 seconds to go through in the morning, and I think it'll be worth your while. And thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Jane. Ginny, did we have some questions?
We do. I think you already answered this at the beginning, but somebody asked, what is an evergreen property?
Okay, I think I covered that, but it's really a property that's been established for a significant length of time, and that means a lot to a lot of people. I would use Coca-Cola as a good example of an evergreen property. Something like Hello Kitty now, I would probably class as an evergreen property. Kitty's been around for a long time, but yeah, I would say that that's probably a fair description.
And the next question is, can you redefine license out versus in?
Sure, absolutely. So if you're licensing out, you're the brand owner. You're licensing your brand out to a licensee, but you own the brand. If you're the licensee, you're the one licensing in, so you're licensing the brand onto your product, so therefore you're licensing the brand into your company. I hope that makes sense. And Mattel's an interesting example because they do both. So they license out Barbie to other product partners, to other licensees, and they're also a licensee for some of the major character brands, and they make toys for them, so they actually do both.
Okay, the next question is, how does private labeling differ from licensing, and how are requests for private labeling from brands, retail, and retailers handled?
I think James is probably best placed to answer that one.
Sure. So typically private label, when you have a retailer like Kroger, they might take a license and then they might need a manufacturer or co-packer to supply them the product that will go under an exclusive brand or arrangement with a retailer. Where licensing, when I license a third-party manufacturer, they are able to sell to multiple retail accounts, depending on the restrictions that might be negotiated into that contract. But private label is normally very specific for an account, and licensing is much broader.
Okay, and the next question is somebody's asking Stephen where they sign up for the License Mag subscription, but that was just on the slide.
Yeah, licensemag.com.
Yeah, on the upper right-hand page, you'll see a place where you can subscribe to the daily e-news.
You know, and there's one thing I do want to add just on the presentation here. If you are new to licensing and you need guidance and direction, there are a lot of expert consultants that are in the industry that will assist you in finding you the right brand, negotiating the right business terms for you, and giving you other guidance. And you can find those consultants. You can send me an email, or you can even look on LIMA's website for that information, as well as License Magazine.
That was actually the next question, so that was great. Do you look for new products to recommend to companies you represent for licensing?
I tend to represent brands, not product, but I do like looking at innovation and unique product that are out there that I would then introduce to the manufacturers that I do business with. But it's primarily I'm representing a talent or a brand building their portfolio into consumer products.
Okay. And the next question is, are there opportunities for new products to become a licensed product?
Yes, there are. And I'm trying to think of examples where a product has then become successful and extended into other areas. There's many, and I'm blanking right now, but Stephen, do you have any ideas on top of your head on what you've seen as a product out there that is then extended into multiple areas?
You know, you're absolutely right, James. It is done, but again, blanking on it right now. But yes, it can be done, and you know, I would argue that certainly some of these YouTube celebrities are products that are, and you know, they've come out of nowhere and they've become instant hits, and thus, you know, there's products that are coming around because of them. So.
The interesting thing is that our exhibitors at Licensing Expo mostly make one thing. They're experts in one area. So, for example, in the case of Skechers, it's footwear. In the case of Coca-Cola, it's soft drinks. And the reason they exhibit at Licensing Expo is to extend that successful brand into other categories. So they recognize that though they are great at making their core product, they want to partner with the best-in-class product partners to make other products outside of that. So.
Great. The next question is, would you please expand on what licensing deals typically look like in terms of payments, royalties, and terms?
That really varies. It depends on the brand. Someone like Disney, who's very successful in licensing and has a multi-billion-dollar program, their royalty rates, depending on the category again, using apparel, because I know some of the rates, their royalty rates would be anywhere from 12 to 18%, versus a corporate brand in the same category might be half of that, more of that, I would say 7 to 10%. So it depends on the category. It depends on the manufacturer's relationships at retail and where you plan on selling it. But there's a lot of variables. There is the minimum guarantees, the advances, and the royalty rates will vary by, again, the licensed property, the type of manufacturer, the territory that it's being sold in.
The next question is, do most licensors require exclusive rights to artwork?
No. To be honest with you, at least on my side, my clients, we tend to grant non-exclusive agreements. I would say 98% of our 500 agreements we have are non-exclusive. Only time it warrants an exclusivity is if we're working with a company that is a category leader, the preferred vendor at retail, and most of the channels that we've granted them rights to. But exclusivity, what we don't do is double license. That's not what we like to do. We don't want to upset the buyer or the manufacturers that are already committing to financial guarantees. But it's a different case for each property owner and agency you work with. That's just from my point of view and what we do.
The next question is, do houseware licensing companies look for original artwork to add to their products?
Original artwork. So this is probably more, I'm going to say, art-based than the corporate brands or talent that we work with from media and television and YouTube. If we can say, we like to look for uniqueness that's offered out there that we could develop and offer to the manufacturers. Is probably the best way to explain that.
I think as well, if you're, I'm not sure who asked the question, but you can email me directly. I have somebody on my team that pretty much exclusively manages all the art brands at Licensing Expo and works really, really closely. We have around 70 to 80 companies in the art section. So she's a great resource, and she's been on the team a long time working with our art exhibitors. If you ping me, and I'll connect you with her.
Okay, and then I did get a question via email. What's the best way to attract licensors for a unique and protected product that has nothing like it in the market?
I mean, first step is when you're speaking to a licensor, if they're willing, you want to have them enter into an NDA so that they're, I mean, hopefully you have a patent pending or already filed for that type of product. But enter into an NDA with the brand owner, and then you can begin your discussions from there. But if you don't have a patent, then it could be a challenge depending on the category, like housewares or toys. I mean, there are a lot of manufacturers out there that will, once they see the product in the market, and if it's successful, they're going to make a variation of that type of product.
Okay, and that is all the questions I have.
Great, thank you. Thanks once again for having us speak to your members, and the three of us will also be presenting this presentation at the Houseware Show on Saturday. Judy, can you remind me the time and place of that?
It will be at the Houseware Show in the North Building in the Adventures Review on stage.
Okay, so is that 12:30, I think, or maybe check the website for the time?
Hold on. You said it was Saturday?
I think it's Saturday.
Hold on. I can't find my schedule. We can post it.
We can email it to everybody who's on the call. We can email that. So if you want to catch up with any of us also, we'll be there at that time, and we'll be happy to connect with you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a good day, everyone.